Christian churches in America are under fire for not offering to help a starving baby. It's true. I don't know if you've heard this, but it's all over social media, especially TikTok. A lady has been calling churches asking if they would provide formula, just one formula, for her starving baby. And only one, maybe two so far out of tens of churches have agreed to help. Now, that is unlike the mosques, unlike other places of worship, other groups that have almost entirely been charitable to help this little child. And it's interesting because it's not new that people report back that for whatever reason, churches today and many years into the past have become somewhat stingy. Now, I'm in an interesting position because I used to be a minister of a Swedenborgian Christian church in Canada. Now, I'm from America, I live in America, but I did spend some time working with the church. And I can tell you that a lot of churches feel the pressure in terms of people, in terms of giving and manpower, but that's not true for all churches. No, often as churches kind of lose people, as they lose money, they tend to amalgamate into a mega church or bigger churches, and they get a ton of money. Now, I can't say I was so lucky to work in a church like that, if it is lucky, but I do know somewhat of the culture in churches like that, having attended some in the past. And I think often churches get undermined by their theology nowadays. I think often Christians in general, especially leaders, because they know the theology, get caught up in the minutia of what it means to be Christian and kind of put all their money, put all their interest, put all their care in that, in their flock, you could say as well. And they don't have anything left over for other people. And it's entirely wrong. Christians have been undermined by the Paulian, I'll call it, idea that works don't matter. You can literally put up every single one of Paul's doctrines from the letters in the New Testament. If you flip to the New Testament, you have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which tell the story of Christ, the gospel. And then you have Acts and some other books, many of which are letters purportedly from Paul. And Paul never knew Jesus in the flesh before his death. He said as much. In fact, he was killing Christians until one day he came back into town and said, I ran into Jesus and he blinded me. Kind of interesting, right? Jesus blinding people. Kind of funny. Until I said, oh, you're amazing, essentially, and took up his call to protect his church and to lead the Christian faith. And there's no real issue with that story for me, besides the fact that Jesus said he came to uh, help the blind see, except for what it led to, which is Paul starting to teach a gospel of you're not good enough. Faith apart from works saves. Jesus is the mediator and the sacrificial lamb. Many things that Jesus himself never said. In fact, he said quite the opposite, saying heaven is within you already, saying that the Good Samaritan is an example of someone walking with God, not a Christian, saying many things about living a faith. In fact, Jesus said, for those Christians out there who kind of doubt this idea, he said directly in multiple places in the gospel, why say Lord, and not do what I've told you to do, in that day, I'll say I never knew you. Sounds like he's kind of hitting hard on a subject, and it happens to be the fact that many people who follow him say Jesus, say he's their master or whatever, something he never asked for. They don't do what he told them to do. And I can attest to this having grown up in evangelical churches, which often described the fact that it's just the saving faith of accepting him as your master that gets you into heaven, which condemns everyone else to hell, by the way, not the works that you'll later do. Yes, you'll do works, you'll do great works, but it's actually the saving faith. And you really suck. That's what they say. They say you're really bad. Humans are bad. And you can never live up to sort of Jesus's message, which he literally said, be perfect as Father God is perfect, follow the commandments. He described in many ways what we're supposed to do. He tried to make it very clear if you read the red text in the Bible, all of which are kind of washed away, wiped away by Paul's words, or at least the theology taken from Paul that most churches paint the entire Bible with, the entire faith journey of their churches with, what they say is important. And I think often in positions of power, the draw of using Paul is because it's easy and it gives you power. It literally empowers you. Whereas Jesus said, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. The greatest among you will be your servant. Paul, on the other hand, said, what? Slaves, obey your masters, listen to them, be deferential, because Jesus is about to come. So don't mess things up, right? He said, wives, be subservient to your husbands. And there's no real flip side of that. People say there are some good things about what the husbands are supposed to do. That's not the same as, being subservient, not being allowed to speak in churches, having to wear headdresses. The whole rigmarole of what Paul said really brings tears to a lot of people's eyes over time. And Jesus said none of it. Jesus, in fact, leveled out the playing field between genders, between hierarchy, between even God and humanity. And I think this is where we get to the heart of most of our faith journeys, whether we're Christian, Muslim, perhaps even atheists, right? Where we feel like we are just nothing compared to God. And that humility means looking at ourselves as crap, maybe, as never being worthwhile. Whereas in fact, the universe itself, Jesus, all these kind of messages from God in their different forms emphasize that no, you are the whole in a small form. You're an image of God, you're an image of the universe. How your body works, even, is reflected in the stars, reflected in how galaxies work. In fact, there are studies done by supercomputers many years ago, so I'm sure there's even more now, that showed that the macro level interactions of our universe weirdly, quote unquote, weirdly, reflect how the human body works. Crazy, right? How the human brain works. It's almost like the whole universe is one giant brain. Oh, it's so strange. Reminds me of something that Norm Macdonald said. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because it's a little contentious, but he said, we are not greater than the universe. Our consciousness is part of the universe. So you can't say the universe is dead, because guess what? We're not dead. You can't say the universe isn't conscious, because guess what? We're conscious. We're not outside of the universe. So you can't remove any human attribute from the universe itself. It's like saying, well, your toe doesn't have eyes, so you can't see. It's, well, I still have eyes. There's still eyes here. So back to the Christian, um, lack of charity. Swedenborg, who was an 18th century mystic, he said very directly in his chastisement of the Christian churches of his time that the Christian church was dead because they had lost the heart of what it means to have faith, to live with God, which is love and charity. Charity is the form of love in action. The intention you have is like a love, right? And how you go about that love, making it happen, showing that you love something, is like faith or intellect or wisdom. It's the knowledge of your intention, of your heart. And the result is like the effect in a cause effect relationship. It's like the fruit, it's the action of life. And you can see what the whole thing is doing just by looking at the fruit. That's what Jesus said, right? Look at their fruits to know them, to know if they're good, to know if they're worth following. And although Christian churches and Christians will become very defensive when it comes to this reality of the unwillingness to give of a lot of Christian churches today, it shows that there's something wrong in this equation. And it has to be both the heart of those faiths at this time and the intellect, the wisdom of it. That doesn't mean all the people are evil, but it does say that the Christian church, these churches are ran and spreading a message of no love, no love, because we know in history that the Christian church has used their faith to batter so many marginalized groups. That doesn't mean that they haven't done great things. I think actually the Christian church has allowed for a lot of amazing things coming from where we were, which is a really dark place over the last couple thousand years. Call it the Kali Yuga, what have you. I don't know what was going on. But Christians have done amazing things. And when we overlook that, we're overlooking history, right? In fact, Swedenborg himself, this Christian mystic, he's a Christian mystic, he influenced Emerson, Helen Keller, Johnny Appleseed, William Blake, Goethe, and they've done amazing things in this world. It just shows the domino effect of what living a open and wise and loving life can do. But unfortunately today, a lot of our organizations and the theology that sits on those are corrupt. And I think often intentionally corrupt. Unfortunately, a lot of leaders who have influenced other leaders around them have come into churches with their own gain in mind. We see it on the headlines today, right? Christian pastors hurting people, abusing children, doing heinous things again and again and again. It's not just the Catholic Church, although there may be more of them who are priests. I don't know. I do think allowing your ministry to marry, to have families, allowing women into organizations, all these things tend to help, home life, tend to help spiritual life. Not that everyone needs to be married, of course not. Um, but having these healthy modalities allowed in your church can really bring health. And unfortunately, those who come in knowing that they'll have access to money, to people, to all these things, it's in their interest to undermine the faith because, as we've seen through many colonial powers throughout history, they have to undermine, change, transform the Christian theology to get it to work against the people. And that's the Christianity that we see in the history books. Not that it's everyone, but that's what we've seen. And funny enough, in history, if you really want to study it and not just kind of paint with one brush, oh, Christians are evil, you'll see that often, like the Spanish who brought Christianity to certain cultures, um, they find that the people, when they take Christianity and they start reading or learning for themselves, outside of the bounds of what the priesthood has decided is theology, they see those red words. They pull out the heart of the teachings. And that's when you see the revolutions in the, not the ancient past, but in the past over the last, 1,000 years, right? And so we see how Christianity can be used like any great sword for both good and bad. And in fact, it is because it is so good, so great, that people have attached Paul's letters, some things that we call Paul's letters that are probably not from Paul, all these things, these theologies, to weaponize it against the people, to transform it and to turn it, to distract away from what's effective for the good, which is Christ's message. Whether or not Christ was God in the flesh, Son of God, he called us all children of God, by the way, doesn't really matter when you have such powerful words teaching love, teaching returning to the heaven, to the Father, God, the Father, the Mother within you. He said it again and again. I'm in the Father is in me, we're in you. Come back to being in us by letting go of all these things that aren't like God. He said, become like God. Sometimes we say, oh, I don't want to become Christ-like because that's above my pay grade. It's like, well, no, that's his message. So to follow Christ, it means doing what he told us to do. It's becoming like little children. I don't know what that means. Maybe getting a little goofier, letting things go quicker, you know, seeing our emotions, letting them out, not hurting people, a wise child, right? But being present to ourselves for healing, being present to our family like a little kid is for healing, for love, for joy, for the wisdom that comes with caring. And the beautiful thing about Christ's message is that it's already within us. It's not that these Christian churches have no hope. No, within each person in that church is Christ, is God, known by many names, even in the Bible. That's what Jesus said, anyway. And we have but to repent, notice what we're doing that hurts people, notice how we rage against people, notice what gets us to fall away from Christ's modality, right? It's just when those emotions come up, noticing that we're doing it. Just noticing and giving it to God, knowing that God is as aware of those things as you are, plus a little bit more. And he loves you as himself, as he told us to. He wouldn't tell us to do that if he wasn't already doing that with us. In fact, he said, love others as I've loved you. He didn't mean that as something that you could never do. And he promised us that, saying we'll do greater things than him. So the invitation, the invitation that is this scandal is a great one. It's a great one from Christian churches, because the hell of hell is loving it, loving your cynical, hurtful attitude, loving that other people are going to hell. It becomes more about the faith alone saves, than it does the heart of the message, the truth of Christ's words. And we make it that way, because if only Christians go to heaven, they're the only ones we really have to care about. But that's not what Jesus said, and he never said only Christians go to heaven. He knew himself to be the way, as in literally the universe's way, God's way. He didn't say, come through me, the way, the truth, the life, because only his name would get us into heaven. He said that because he knew himself to be beyond his name. We're getting it wrong anyway, Jesus. There were no hard J's at the time. And so we can learn from Christ. We can open that text. We can learn from our other teachings, our fellow humanity today, and return to the love that's natural for us. Because who wants to be in the hell of not caring? I know I don't. I know that when I'm there, which might be often sometimes, I'm anxious. I feel disconnected. I feel in the clouds and yearning, hoping for the next day or a week from now or months from now, yearning for all the things I don't have that I want that could be changed. In fact, every single moment, sometimes in that state, there's something wrong, right? That's just the feeling. Not just that there's things wrong, like I have a lawsuit or something, which thankfully I don't, but know that something is wrong in every moment that I can't control just what I'm seeing and the other things in my life and that and this and everything, right? And the beauty of Swedenborg's message, which is that return to love, is that in his visions as a mystic, he said, no, in fact, even the evil things will be used for great goodness in the future. People will learn from them. People will grow. Hearts will be kindled. We'll be taught how to move and do things that help because we feel it. We feel the power of that fear, which is not really power, but it seems like power. And we move to change it. We feel the power of that hate and we move to stop it. We feel its impact on little children, on our family. And when we've so hardened our heart thinking there's nothing I can do to save myself, we're forgetting the fundamental truth of your life right now, which is that you're still alive. So there's still light, love, it's still there. You can't be disconnected from the source if you're still thinking, you're still doing. There's still hope. It doesn't matter what you've been up to. Because in a lot of ways, the spirit world interacts with us, which was another thing that Swedenborg talked about. But whether or not we want to believe that, our invitation today is to let go and to love, to notice the egotistical worldview that we live out of, the defensiveness, the false theology, the misuse of God's holy text, and to do better, to learn to give, to notice our stinginess, our sense of scarcity, because that's what a lot of these powers are trying to convince us of. Whereas, in fact, it's all in humanity's hands. We just feel disempowered to do anything about it. If we were to work together, if we're willing to love others, you may find that God's already putting things in place for you. And then you'll find that humanity will bring about the changes that we all hopefully really want. So thank you. Peace. Thanks for joining us here at Spiritual Sunshine. Please subscribe and like. If you made it this far, come on, you got to, right?